YouTube is where it's at, dude. And it's what Pineda told me all the like 3 years ago. He was right. Remember that guy yesterday? He asked like, "What's the best platforms?" I'm like, you shouldn't be thinking that. You should be thinking building an ecosystem of attention, and each platform gives you the ability to do that with short form, medium form, and long form content. At the same time, being conscious and purposeful and intentional. That the goal is to get them to long form. If it's 15 hours, it would take 5,200 short form pieces of content for somebody to get to 15 hours. It takes like 30 videos if they're only watching half.
I've got to start identifying the stories that I can
tell of agents.
That I can lead into.
Here's an agent that recently joined our team. So we got him courses, held him accountable. Here's the results and outcomes. If you think that you could benefit from these resources, DM me the word join. I think the hero is the client. And he's giving us the plan that he uses to make the client the hero and for them to get what they want and avoid what they don't want. He's also the guide to help us as operators, because he was like, look, we're all just serving people, whether it's agents or if it's our buyers and sellers. So he's equipping us with a plan so that way we can deliver those types of experiences. So that way we can get what we want, which is more deals and income, that it's more profitable, and avoid what we don't want. I also thought what he said, which is fascinating, is that like money put into hospitality is worth more than cold advertising. Because what you create is a raving fan. They become the army of like ambassadors. So I told Carla like afterwards and Gabrielle, I'm like, look, we could all the touch points when agents come into our ecosystem, from when they first, hey, I'm thinking about joining, or I booked a call, that's a touch point, to the actual call itself, to the follow-up afterwards, to the application process, to now you're onboarded, to your first deal, to like all of those are touch points. And Gabriella said, she was like, yo, how could we have a Dreamweaver at the Do More Deals Summit, where you have like a certain budget and you equip everybody to be listening and watching? And how did we make somebody's like event? Let's say you overhear someone say like, oh man, like I got a headache, but I don't have any Advil. Right. And the Dreamweaver is empowered to go like, make it happen. Or like, hey, we forgot our toothpaste. And then it shows up in your room, or hey, you know what I mean? Yeah. And she still lives in my experience has been is that getting around people who are doing, meaningfully more expands what you think is possible. And this is the great place to do that, whether it be the speakers or at lunches or like whatever. And Liliana in the card the other day is like, hey, I'm building a network so that way you can benefit from it. So if ever you need anything in the Massachusetts area or whatever, like you call Ben. Right. You're like, you know what I mean? If you ever need something in California, call Jose. If you ever need to know about creative finance, call Pace. Just building a network, which comes along with. So part of our job too is being in really high level masterminds, seeking out like the best information, the most accurate information. Yeah. So part of a leader is like when, let's say like Pace invites me to stuff, I go, my job is to be in the room so I can learn. If I'm going to take a leadership position, I'm responsible for the people that are responsible for the results. So I have to be committed to constantly growing. Yes. No sé. No. Ayúdame, por favor. Sí. I'm just tricking people left and right, you know what I'm saying? If I'm going to take on a leadership role, what's required of me changes. One of what's required of me is I have to be learning and growing, because that's the only way I can perpetually keep adding value. The second is I have to be committed to disseminating information, meaning like 7 times said is once heard. I have to say things like over and over and over again. What's talked about is thought about. And I have to do the heavy lifting of figuring out what's worth talking about.
Be willing to let go of things that you thought were
important to talk about. Yes. And then I have to stay ready so I don't have to get ready. I have to be constantly prepared. So whenever the opportunity comes up to talk about the things that are important, I'm ready to do it.
And you have to understand.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So for me too, like I also have to, I feel like I have to understand the thing that I am communicating. And so I've got to have the time in order
to think about it. Yes. And to understand it fully. So like, it was interesting. Like I was on the way over here the first day of the event, and I was journaling because I had a long car ride. So I'm journaling thoughts. And then after the first mastermind that I'm sitting with all the teams, I journaled like, oh, here's what came to the surface. And then I drew a conclusion from what came to the surface, right? About like 3 different tracks. You can be an individual agent. We've talked about that. versus team versus like individual with an organization, and what's actually independent of how I feel about it, what's actually more true. So part of it is having the time to like really get clarity of thought.
Yeah.
Because that allows you to convey things with conviction. And is conviction what's required in order to get people to believe, right? So 7 times said is once heard, but if I say it with conviction, then it starts to cultivate belief. But I need to get myself convicted. I need to get myself certain, which leads to conviction. Yeah, and certainty has to deal with like actually having the time to think and be like, is this true?
Yeah.
And then triangulating ideas with believable people. So I'll call Jose and be like, hey, bro, here's what's coming to the surface. Like, does this seem like it's accurate? Or I just spoke to Casey, who's like world-class 2 organizations with 3,000 people, Casey Gihak. And I respect what she thinks. And I was telling her like, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Tell me if I'm thinking clearly.
Yeah.
You'd be doing me a favor if you poked a hole in what I'm saying. Oh. Muchas gracias, señora. Sí. So I think you're in a season of clarity. I think you used to rely on routine, really, in a way, and I mean this lovingly, turned your brain off.
It's easier.
It's easier.
Yeah.
And it's duplicatable, predictable. Your need for security is high. So, that's fine. Leadership requires a different set of skills. And it's interesting because in the past, you told me when we first started going down this path, you identified and described yourself like identity. Tell me what to do. Show me a path.
Well, I looked for everyone else.
Right.
I remember I came to you and I was like, my wife knows the path. I'll just have her choose it and
Right.
then I'll do all of the
Right.
work.
Like I'm just a worker.
Yeah.
And that required an extended period of time of changing the identity to like, no, dude, you're not just a worker, you're a leader. But part of leadership is, again, like figuring out, if I'm in the position that everybody's looking to me to where we're going, I need to be clear on where we're going and why. Moses was clear as to why they were wandering around in the desert. Everybody else gave him static about it for 40 years. Are you sure? You know what they actually said? We would have preferred to stay slaves. Yes? We would have preferred to be slaves, and because at least we had a meal and it was predictable and duplicatable, right? So a leader, it requires like clarity and conviction. Moses was receiving his clarity and conviction from God, right? But as a leader, if I'm going to be in that position and people are going to follow, I need to determine the type of leader I want to be. Lowest level of leadership is title. Second highest level of leadership is relational. The third highest level of leadership is production. The fourth highest level of leadership is as you create other leaders, you build other leaders. The fifth, and this is the highest and it's the hardest, it's the pinnacle, is people follow you because of who you are and what you stand for. So I got to decide what type of leader I want to be. And then if people are giving me their attention and they're allowing me to lead, I need to be clear on where we're going and why. With conviction and getting you clear on like, okay, where's that conviction coming from? What's the actual mission? What is your role as a leader within that mission? And then you can draw upon a source that's independent of the world. Because the world is full of doubt, worry, fear.
It controls everybody's life.
100%. We don't want to admit it, but it's very true.
Well, we don't.
It's
the same thing when I quit drinking. The guys who I hung out with that drank didn't like to be around me.
Yes.
Because it amplifies what's already in their own head that they drink.
Yeah, it amplifies their discontent.
Yep.
Yes. Yes. And we care more about our having, but like God cares more about our being. So who am I being? And he wants us to be more like him, which is to be a servant, like a servant leader to others. Because as I grow more, I can give more. And as I give more and help more people, then you end up having more. But the having is like extra. It's not the main mission. So it's just getting clear on that. So like if you looked at the talk today, his mission, his purpose on the planet is to show that there's goodness in the world, and the way that his ministry is hospitality. Right? That's his ministry. But he's completely clear on who he is, what his gifts are, and what his role is. And he can convey that with conviction and clarity. Yeah, so the cool is that as humans, we're all drawn to like goodness and beauty. right?
Yeah.
Naturally.
Yep.
Nobody needs to be prompted. Nobody needs accountability. Like we're all attracted and drawn to things that feel good. Well, the really cool thing about that is when the thing that feels good is you. Right? And then that becomes like, again, it's biblical. Be a vessel so people can see the glory of God in you. It's like a light where you're shining your light onto other people. And I think you can do that in business. You can do good by doing good.
And that's what was the last guy's speaker's name?
Will.
Will.
Yeah.
Well, what did Will said that it's the feeling of people's faces and providing that sort of moment.
Yeah.
Is like the most selfish thing because of the way that it made him feel.
Yeah.
It's no surprise that is likely the best feeling in the world.
Yeah.
There's a reason that God puts that.
Oh, 100%. And what it makes me think about is I remember two things. One is a story that I heard Tony Robbins tell where he's like, yeah, the bumblebee very selfishly goes from like all the flowers, right? And the reason is because the bumblebee wants nectar.
Yeah.
But unbeknownst to the bumblebee, what's actually happening is he's pollinating all along the way. It's built in by design. And then I remember saying to Rick one time, I'm like, man, like it feels really good when you connect from a place of contribution and like really make a meaningful impact in somebody. And I was quiet and I was like, yeah, it's almost like it's built in. And Rick was like, oh, that's because it is. And I was like, oh, how interesting.
But it's amazing how antithetical that was to how we did.
Oh, yeah.
Everything before.
Which was completely transactional. Yeah.
But it was intentionally transactional.
And well, the problem is the environment that we were in promoted the transactional kind of mindset and actually celebrated it. Yeah. So to your point is what, as a leader, what's talked about is what's thought about. And I think in the end, love is an unbeatable business strategy because not only does it promote like goodness in the world, but it also builds fantastically strong relationships. It feels amazing. There's nothing else. Like when we were at the leadership retreat and I heard so many people without being prompted say how much, like our relationship had impacted them. That's like priceless, dude.
Yeah.
You can't buy that with money, right? So if the thing that I want to be greedy for is like my name being in somebody's testimony, that's a worthy goal and objective. And as a byproduct of that, because you're a servant king, you're probably going to do really well as well. Cheers to that. Hey, how much has your life changed in the last 3 years?
Well, it's
Can you imagine where you would be,
I
bro?
was talking to my mom last night. We had a wonderful dinner at that Cuban restaurant.
You can do that throughout the day.
Excellent, right?
Unreal.
Yeah.
But I was telling her the story of the last 3 years, and you think about the end of 2020 when I left Steve Powers, and sort of we got connected in January of 2021. From that point,
I had to undo so much thinking. So much thinking, bro.
but I also understood very, very like the first time we had that Zoom call, like whether it was Greg or Grant that put us
Connect us, yeah.
we were just like, yeah, let's jump on a Zoom call. I think it was like 45 minutes or an hour.
Just talking.
But that was the first time that I had a coach and trainee, whatever
Yeah.
I am, relationship where it was just a comfortable. I felt like I was more authentic in that one conversation than I'd ever been in a coaching session with anyone.
For like years with all other coaches, yeah.
Right, but never did I. But that was the first thing where I was like, oh, it can be a little bit different.
Yeah.
And then it was like every step along the way
Yep.
was sort of that development. But that's what, and then I was thinking, I was telling him, so my mother's been obviously meeting everybody,
Yeah.
and hearing stories, and obviously everybody's been so kind. Mark talking and Jess and Dan, the whole crew. Like those relationships, like I'm so fortunate. I feel so fortunate to have like the opportunity to get to know these people.
Yeah.
And it's not surprising that people that are surrounded by you are all the same
Type.
type,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
We're all drastically different in how we
Yeah, personalities, how we approach, sure. But the core. That's great.
There's 6 people on the team.
Yeah, yeah.
It's crazy. Not organization, but
Just like team, yeah.
individual team.
You don't have to be.
I don't.
Right. Yeah, it's awesome. You're starting to see what happens. Like what you're starting to experience is leadership. Yes? Where you become the conduit. It flows through you to others.
We always talk about.
And that's a beautiful thing. And that's why, like, when I pulled you aside and was like, hey, bro, you can lead. Like 100%. What's awesome is you're at the, I told you this before, but you're at the front end of actually materializing and experiencing stepping into that role. And you're consistently each step along the way stepping into that identity, because you can only behave in accordance with the way you see yourself. And you're a perfect example. Like when people tell me like, oh, you can't duplicate, I'm like, that's not true. It's not, because we're different, whatever, but it's just completely not true. It's just that building people's hard, and it takes a long time. But it's worth it. It's completely worth it, because not only do you have a meaningful impact, you get that feeling, because like I know how appreciative you are, and that just is like extremely gratifying. But then you get to watch as they step in to that vision and go out and make a huge impact themselves. Yeah, I'll be like, hey, do you remember when there was like, just like, I mean, we can already do that. At the Do More Deal Summit, you'd be like, hey, do you remember the first Freedom Builders? There were like 6 people there.
By the way, you got to recreate something like that. And that was.
It was special, wasn't it? It was. You felt that? Yeah. Well, I've been talking to Justin about maybe doing like a version, but just like a high level mastermind where it's Freedom Builders. It's like a high level mastermind for.
Thank you.
Let's go. Ben's ready to vibrate. Let's go. He's like, can I have another one? Where I said to him, because he knows like our skill sets complement each other. And I know all the top producers who have the problem of no time, and they want time freedom and location freedom, and I can teach them how to do that. He knows people in the business world. A lot of his clients are hectomillionaires. We can bring those two worlds together, which I think benefits both, because the people that are aspiring to that they can bring things to the table that the other people, you know what I'm saying? And then we can talk about health, like just wealth, which is really wellness. That's what it comes from, and that comprises like a whole bunch of things like health, physical. I mean, yeah, health, spiritual. It'll be like kind of Christian based, mental and financial. And then we meet in like Tahoe and go skiing, or like all dope places. People are always asking me on a regular basis, who do I use for media, right? Like specifically, what are the tools? And I just gave a talk at EXPCon. They asked me to speak on media, which is kind of funny to me.